In a prison in North Korea, a woman lies bloodied and broken. CIA agent Evelyn Salt. Guards torture her, demanding she confess to espionage. She insists she is only there on business, but her captors refuse to believe her. Sometime later, Salt's fellow CIA agent, Ted Winter, arrives and negotiates a prisoner exchange. Salt is stunned. Agency protocol dictates that no one agent's life is worth compromising others' cover. Ted admits it's true, but reveals that the CIA had no choice. Salt's friend, Mike Krause, campaigned relentlessly on her behalf, pressuring the Senate and the State Department. The agency, eager to avoid a PR disaster, caved in. 2 years later, Salt and Mike are married, sharing a quiet life in the city with their dog and Mike's beloved spiders. He's an arachnologist. Salt has traded fieldwork for paperwork at the CIA, but one afternoon, her routine is interrupted. Agent Peabody approaches her with an unusual request. A Russian defector has just turned himself in, and they need someone who speaks the language. Salt agrees. She enters the interrogation room where the defector, a wiry man named Orlov, waits. He immediately notices her wedding ring and comments that a husband must be a distraction for an agent. He then reveals he has cancer and once worked for the FSB. The CIA verifies both claims, clearing him to share his story. Orlov begins. In 1975, a Russian patriot devised a long-term plan to destroy America. He stole infants and trained them to be spies, fluent in American culture, behavior, and ideology. These children became highly skilled warriors, sleeper agents embedded deep within American society, ready to strike when the time came. That time, Orlov says, is imminent. During the funeral of the U.S. Vice President, one of these agents, known only as KA-12, will assassinate the Russian president. The CIA knows of the KA program, but dismisses it as a Cold War myth. Skeptical, they cut the interrogation short. Just as Salt prepares to leave, Orlov drops a bombshell. KA-12's name is Evelyn Salt. Salt freezes. The accusation hits her like a thunderclap. Is she being set up? She immediately requests permission from Ted to call Mike, disturbed by Orlov's earlier comment about her ring. Ted allows it, but Mike doesn't answer. As Peabody deliberates next steps, he orders Salt confined in an office until the situation is sorted. Meanwhile, 2 agents escort Orlov to a secure location using the elevator. But Orlov is prepared. He retrieves a concealed knife from his shoe and kills both agents. He escapes easily. The CIA is too preoccupied with launching a manhunt to notice when Salt slips out of the office under the pretense of needing the restroom. Salt manages to slip into the emergency stairwell, evading the initial sweep of agents. But the moment doesn't last long. The CIA catches on and begins sealing every door in the building. Thinking quickly, Salt grabs a fire extinguisher and uses it to cloud the lenses of security cameras, obscuring her path from surveillance. As she moves through the building, her phone rings. Ted is calling. He tries to reason with her, telling her that running only makes her look more guilty. But Salt is unmoved. Her only concern now is finding her husband. Reaching a janitor's closet, she hurriedly mixes chemicals inside the hollow leg of a table. When the tactical team closes in, Salt springs her trap. The improvised bomb explodes in their faces, buying her precious time. She snatches a gun from one of the stunned agents and uses it to smash open a window, creating an escape route. Without hesitation, Salt climbs out and flees, sprinting through city blocks until she finds a taxi. She jumps in and dials Mike's number again. Still no answer. Knowing she's likely being tracked, she removes her SIM card and destroys it. As the taxi weaves through the streets, Salt recalls a conversation with Ted from years ago. He had instructed her to get close to Mike. At the time, Mike was a renowned scientist with access to sensitive sites, including North Korea. Befriending him had been a strategic move to build her cover. But what started as an assignment slowly became something else entirely. Salt eventually reaches her apartment, only to find it empty. Mike is gone. Signs of a struggle confirm what she fears. He's been taken. Without wasting a second, she packs a bag with a gun, some essentials, and one of Mike's spiders. Just as the CIA converges on the building, Salt makes her exit, slipping out the window with her dog in tow. Peabody and Ted burst into the apartment moments later, finding only an empty room. Frustrated, Peabody grits his teeth, while Ted, clearly conflicted, suggests that Salt might actually be telling the truth. What if someone really is framing her? Outside, Salt scales the building and enters the neighboring apartment where a young girl lives. She quickly asks the girl to look after her dog while she's gone. Before leaving, Salt changes into fresh clothes and thinks again about Mike. She remembers the early days, showing up at the museum just to build a relationship with him. But somewhere along the way, her intentions changed. Her feelings became real. Disguised now with a hat pulled low, Salt steps out into the street. But even in disguise, Ted spots her. The CIA moves in, forcing Salt into another chase through the city. The pursuit stretches to a highway, where they manage to trap her between lanes. Desperate, Salt tries to explain. She insists that she's innocent, that someone else is the true assassin, and she's being used as a distraction. But no one listens. Cornered, Salt makes a bold move. She leaps off the overpass and lands on a moving truck below. The chase escalates. CIA agents and police vehicles swarm behind her as Salt bounds from one truck to another, evading capture. Peabody takes a shot and manages to hit her in the hip, forcing her to abandon the trucks and continue on foot. Bleeding and in pain, she stumbles down the road until a biker comes into view. Salt knocks the rider aside and commandeers the motorcycle, roaring off into traffic. The sudden change in pace makes it impossible for the CIA cars to follow through the congestion. Meanwhile, back at CIA headquarters, Peabody receives new information. A report confirms that Evelyn Salt's backstory aligns with Orlov's claims. Her parents died when she was young, and she had indeed spent years in Russia. The revelation adds a new layer of concern to the case. As Salt races through the streets, she stops at a biker bar. There, in a dimly lit bathroom, she tends to her wound, using a feminine pad as a makeshift bandage. She changes into clean clothes and stares at herself in the mirror, haunted by memories of Mike and the peaceful life they once shared. The longing in her eyes is clear. She's not just on the run. She's running toward the only thing that's ever made her feel truly human. Salt boards a bus headed for New York. As she rides, she thinks back to the moment she was freed from the North Korean prison. When they reunited, she confessed to Mike that she was actually working for the CIA, admitting that a relationship between them might not be possible. But Mike hadn't cared. He had told her he loved her anyway and asked her to be with him regardless of the risks. Upon arriving in New York, Salt checks into a luxurious hotel using a fake identity. She walks down a hallway and takes a coat from a hanger, blending in with the guests. Once inside her room, she begins shedding her disguise, removing her contact lenses and taking out her fake teeth, revealing a stark truth. Evelyn Salt is, in fact, a Russian sleeper agent. Orlov's sudden appearance hadn't been a coincidence. It was part of the mission, a signal to activate her next objective. From her luggage, Salt pulls out a collection of concealed weapons. She extracts venom from Mike's spider and uses it to coat her bullets, making them lethal on contact. Sitting at her computer, she downloads detailed maps of the New York City subway system, planning out her route through the tunnels for what comes next: the assassination of the Russian president. As she dyes her hair black in a bathroom, Salt flashes back to her early CIA days. She remembers just how smoothly she had infiltrated the agency and how easily she had convinced everyone that her loyalty belonged to America. The next day, the streets are overflowing with mourners gathered to honor the recently deceased vice president. The funeral service is heavily guarded, and CIA agents, including Peabody and Ted, are stationed throughout the crowd, on alert for any sign of Salt. To avoid detection, Salt takes the subway. Her train is supposed to stop near the church hosting the funeral, but that station has been closed off due to the event. Salt, however, has already planned for this. She activates a smoke bomb inside her train car. As the other passengers panic and the smoke spreads, she slips away unnoticed, navigating through the tunnels using the digital maps she'd downloaded earlier. Her underground route brings her straight into the church from below. Fighting off every security guard she encounters, Salt advances swiftly through the building. She reaches a room located directly beneath the church's main podium, where the Russian president is in the middle of his speech. Meanwhile, Ted and Peabody receive a report about missing guards. Growing suspicious, they rush off to investigate, but Salt is already in position. She plants a small bomb on the ceiling of the room she's in, timed to detonate just beneath the president. The bomb goes off with precision. The floor above gives way, and the Russian president drops through the hole, crashing into the room below. Without a moment's hesitation, Salt raises her weapon and fires one poison bullet, striking the president. The sound of the gunshot alerts Peabody, who follows the noise and arrives just in time to see Salt standing over the body. Surprisingly, she drops her weapon and surrenders to the authorities. As Salt is dragged out of the church in handcuffs, Ted confronts her. He yells in disbelief and betrayal, crushed by the idea that she could be capable of this. On the way to the hospital, the Russian president is declared dead. In the back of the police car, Salt stares blankly, remembering her childhood in the Russian training facility. As a young girl, she had undergone extensive plastic surgery to completely alter her appearance and had been given the new identity of Evelyn Salt, along with an entirely fabricated American backstory. She had laid in bed next to another child who wondered aloud whether she would ever miss them. Salt had said nothing in response. The police car carrying Salt crosses a bridge, but she suddenly springs into action. She violently attacks the officers, breaking free from her restraints. In the chaos, she causes the car to crash into a group of nearby police vehicles. The force of the impact is brutal, but Salt uses the momentum to her advantage. She takes control of the vehicle and drives it straight off the bridge. Thanks to the deployed airbags, the car lands safely, giving Salt a narrow window to escape once more. A curious crowd begins to gather around the crash site, but Salt takes advantage of the chaos to slip away unnoticed. On her way out, she swipes a hat from a nearby shop and disappears into the streets. Sometime later, Salt is seen on a boat, her thoughts drifting back to the day she was brought back to the United States. She had been delivered into the hands of a new family, instructed to live patiently among them until her orders came. It had all been part of the plan. Upon arriving at the harbor, Salt sees a news report on a nearby television screen. Russian citizens are flooding the streets in anti-American protests, outraged at what they believe to be an act of terrorism against their president. The world is on edge. Nearby, inside a dimly lit bar, Salt meets up with Orlov. He welcomes her with pride, calling her his perfect creation. It turns out that he's not just a random defector. He has always been the mastermind behind the KA program and the one who personally trained Salt from the time she was a child. He scolds her again for getting married, criticizing her attachment to Mike. Salt defends her actions, calmly explaining that it was all part of maintaining her cover, to blend in and look like a normal American woman. Still unsure of her loyalty, Orlov decides to test her. He leads her to his hidden base and takes her into a room where Mike is being held captive underwater. Rather than simply executing him with a bullet, Orlov chooses a crueler route, slowly drowning Mike in front of her. Salt doesn't flinch. She keeps a stoic, unbothered expression, but her eyes give away the pain and helplessness she's feeling. Convinced now that she's still loyal to their cause, Orlov and the others welcome her back with open arms. Salt looks around and recognizes some of the men, fellow operatives who were trained with her when they were all children. After the emotional reunion, Orlov takes her aside for a private conversation. He tells her that the next stage of their operation is even more ambitious. They plan to seize control of America's nuclear arsenal. Salt is to board a plane where she'll meet a contact in a NATO uniform who will deliver the final instructions for the mission. This is the moment Salt has been waiting for. Without warning, she grabs a bottle and smashes into Orlov's throat, killing him instantly for destroying her life. She wastes no time. Quickly arming herself with grenades and firearms, she storms through the hideout, executing every sleeper agent present without hesitation. One by one, she eliminates the people who were once her comrades in training. But when she finally makes it back to the room where Mike was being held, it's too late. His lifeless body confirms what she already feared. He's dead. Salt collapses beside him, filled with sorrow as her mind flashes back to the day they got married. She had been so happy then, full of hope for a peaceful life that would never come to be. Moments later, Salt arrives at the airstrip to take the assigned plane and is surprised to find a familiar face. Schneider, the boy who had once told her he would miss her in the training facility, has grown into a high-ranking colonel. He greets her warmly and explains that they'll be traveling to the White House together. Salt will pose as his attaché, and their goal is clear: assassinate the American president. Schneider mentions there are likely other sleeper agents already embedded within the White House walls. A few hours later, the plane lands in Washington. Salt dons a male disguise, complete with a mustache and suit, to match the fake identification documents Schneider has secured for her. Together, they proceed to the White House and pass through security without issue. Inside, they observe the CIA's presence at the upcoming meeting with the president. Everything is going according to plan. Then, without warning, Schneider stages a violent outburst. He pretends to have gone mad, violently shoving Salt aside before opening fire on everyone in the room. Security immediately rushes to protect the president, ushering him away just in time. Amid the chaos, Schneider activates an explosive device, throwing the situation into full crisis. Back at CIA headquarters, Ted gets word of the attack and instantly suspects that Salt must be involved. He tells his colleagues to keep their eyes open. He's sure she's somewhere close by. Salt uses the chaos caused by Schneider's attack to slip away unnoticed. In the confusion, she steals a security card key and quickly removes her disguise. Watching closely, she sees agents escorting the president to a secure bunker using a private elevator. Once they're out of sight, Salt moves fast. She knocks out the remaining guard, forces open the elevator doors, and climbs down into the shaft. Meanwhile, the president and his security team arrive safely inside the underground bunker. Salt times her move perfectly and manages to slide into the corridor just before the heavy doors close. She disables any guards that get in her way as she advances. With swift precision, she destroys the control panel that manages the doors and surveillance cameras, cutting the team inside off from external visual feeds. Inside the bunker, the president is informed that Russian missile systems are being readied. Taking the threat seriously, he orders his staff to begin reviewing their own nuclear strike options. Some agents are sent out to inspect the door malfunctions, but Salt ambushes them easily, taking them out one by one. Back inside the control room, the president contacts high-ranking military officials to begin the process of activating the nuclear launch authorization codes. As tension builds, White House security finally realizes that Salt is closing in on them. Ted demands a weapon to defend the president, but the guard refuses. Protocol forbids armed personnel near the president without explicit clearance. Without hesitation, Ted reveals his true allegiance. He overpowers the guard, seizes his weapon, and kills everyone in the room. The president is stunned as Ted turns to him, coldly asking for his cooperation. When the president refuses, Ted executes him too. Salt finally arrives at the inner bunker door, only to find it locked. Through the intercom system, she speaks with Ted, who is surprised to hear from her. He tells her that he never revealed his true identity because forming bonds is dangerous in their line of work. She hadn't recognized him earlier because he had been the training class ahead of hers during their youth. Outside the bunker, a fresh security team begins working to breach the door, but Salt focuses on Ted's movements. She listens carefully and deduces his next move. He plans to launch nuclear missiles at the Middle East, hoping the attack will provoke retaliatory strikes against the United States. Salt tells him she wants to help, that she's still with him, but when Ted is moments away from letting her in, he pauses, distracted by breaking news on one of the monitors. To his disbelief, the Russian president has survived the attack. The report explains that he had only suffered a temporary paralysis from the toxin, and he is now fully recovered. That was Salt's plan all along. She had used spider venom to fake his death, not kill him. Realizing this, Ted's face hardens. He now understands that Salt's loyalty to Russia died the day she fell in love with Mike. Trying to win her back, he begins to explain the truth behind the mission. He had been the one to convince Orlov to assign Salt to the Russian president's assassination. Orlov had initially refused because he cared about her and feared she wouldn't survive the mission. But Ted insisted, and he also admits he was the one who ordered Mike's kidnapping to keep Salt in check. This revelation enrages Salt. She opens fire on the glass, separating them, but the barrier is bulletproof. With no way through, she turns her attention to the structure of the room, quickly identifying a section of wall concealing the locking system. As Ted begins using the president's hand to authorize the missile launch, Salt targets the wall, shooting at it in an attempt to bring the whole mechanism down. By shooting through the wall and destroying the locking mechanism, Salt finally breaks into the secure command room and engages Ted in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. At first, Ted has the upper hand, his strength and training allowing him to overpower her. But Salt fights with everything she has. With a desperate push, she knocks him back and rushes to the desk, trying to stop the nuclear launch sequence. Just as she begins working on the system, the security team breaches the room. One of the agents shoots Salt, knocking her to the ground. Luckily, she survives the hit thanks to a bulletproof vest. She is immediately placed under arrest, but because the security cameras were disabled during the entire event, no one saw what Ted did. Officially, he is still recognized as a loyal CIA operative. Peabody soon arrives to inspect the scene and is briefed on the events. He learns about Salt's assault on Orloff's hideout and the assassination that wasn't. All of it leaves him deeply confused about Salt's true intentions. As Salt is being escorted out of the room in handcuffs, she notices something disturbing. Ted discreetly stealing a pair of scissors from the doctor tending his wounds. Without hesitation, Salt reacts. She whips the chain of her handcuffs around Ted's neck and launches herself over the balcony. With lightning speed, she chokes him and breaks his neck, killing him instantly. Salt is later placed in a helicopter with Peabody. Now alone with him, she finally explains everything. How Ted was a Russian sleeper agent, how Mike's death pushed her over the edge, and how she had the perfect opportunity to kill both Peabody and the president at the church, but she didn't. That, she says, is proof enough of where her loyalty now lies. She also warns Peabody that more sleeper agents remain. She intends to hunt them all down for revenge. As Peabody listens, he receives a message confirming that Salt was indeed the one who killed Orloff. That bit of truth shifts something in him. He realizes that Salt may be the only one capable of stopping these infiltrators, and no one in official channels will believe her story. They'll have to do this the unofficial way. Making a split-second decision, Peabody quietly unlocks Salt's handcuffs when no one is looking. As the helicopter flies over a river, Salt jumps out. Peabody pretends she caught him off guard and alerts the others, requesting a search of the area. But Salt is already far ahead. She swims swiftly through the river and disappears into the surrounding forest. Sometime later, news reports reveal that the new president of the United States has traveled to Russia on a peacekeeping mission. During a speech abroad, he proudly declares that all sleeper agents, Salt included, are dead. But the report reveals something telling. The new president had been orphaned as a child in a tragic incident in Russia. It's a subtle, yet chilling implication. He may be a sleeper agent, too.